guys can get it. Quote. That wasn't remote months ago. Listen, we've got promises that, quote, one day, just like America will disappear. Well, he had months and months to take action, to lead with urgency.
So what you just saw there was a clip from Joe Biden's Livestream Town Hall yesterday. He did it from his home in Delaware, aimed at the residents of Florida, and it was a disaster. Just like most of Joe Biden's media appearances have been a disaster since he clinched the nomination or since he became the presumptive nominee. Joe Biden, whether due to technical issues, his cognitive decline, or his dementia, has failed to adequately and effectively communicate with the American voters, and that was no exception. The lighting was poor there. The connection was bad. When you froze the image for a second because the frame rate was really bad, you got pictures of Joe Biden looking like the figment of a child's bad dream. It was awful from front to back. And this is just yet another indication that Joe Biden is going to be very hard pressed to run an effective campaign in the social media, live stream, digital era. That this is an establishment, old school politician who never rocked the boat, and because of that, he is very much going to be hard pressed to win an election based almost entirely on the internet. Joe Biden doesn't have that skill set, and he never had that infrastructure. The only Democrat that rivaled Donald Trump's internet infrastructure was Bernie Sanders. Bill Maher noted this, that only Bernie has millions of supporters, and only Bernie has embraced the online game needed to defeat Donald Trump. And that was said before the era of social distancing, when the internet went from important to absolutely positively essential in any successful political campaign. Joe Biden just isn't there. We've seen it. We've seen him be unable to communicate. We saw that he had to hide away ostensibly for more than a week, basically, because he didn't have lighting in his house. We've seen him have to fumble around with cue cards in the background and jostle his notes because he can't communicate in a clear, streamlined manner with journalists or with his audience or with guests on his live streams. It is not going well. And Donald Trump has many similar issues, but Trump still has the advantage of using traditional media because he can still give press conferences at the White House. The media is there. The connections are clear. He doesn't have to worry about the presentation side, unlike Joe Biden, who, like a lot of us, is stuck at home right now and has to record in his studio. And while I'm sympathetic to that, it's not an excuse for a man with effectively unlimited amount of resources. He could do whatever it takes to improve his connection, to improve his setup, to improve his ability to perform, to get the best IT people available to help him ensure that everything goes off without a hitch. These sorts of issues, this far into the social distancing era, are unacceptable. And the Democratic Party is delusional right now. The neoliberal Democrats are delusional right now if they think this is going well for Biden. The polling doesn't look awful for Biden, but if they think the Biden campaign is working, they are delusional. And you can see that delusion in a New York Times piece published just yesterday by Liz Smith. Her name might sound familiar. She was one of the leading people behind Pete Buttigieg's campaign for the Democratic nomination, and she's since moved on and become a Joe Biden supporter. And she writes an article saying that this election might be the first election in a new era, that the political campaigns of the past might be disappearing before our eyes because this might reflect how campaigns will look in the future. Much more focused on the internet, much more focused on live streaming, with less investment in big fancy rallies and big fancy TV shows. And she notes the following, and I'm not making any of this up. The 77-year-old Mr. Biden, whom the president derisively calls quote-unquote Sleepy Joe, can become the hottest bad boy and disruptor in the media game. Joe Biden has never been a disruptor. Joe Biden has never been a quote-unquote bad boy, unless it's how he's acted in regard to Tara Reade and women like Tara Reade. But Joe Biden's never been a bad boy, a cool dude, a disruptor, avant-garde, cutting edge. He's never been any of those things. The man's been a senator since the 1970s, and the man's only ever been quote-unquote progressive when the polling indicates that being quote-unquote progressive on an issue is the popular thing to do, or when being quote-unquote progressive doesn't anger the corporate and political and social and media elites. That's when Joe Biden moves on an issue. If there was anybody who could be a bad boy disruptor in the media game in this era of internet campaigning, of course it was Bernie Sanders from the Democratic side. Donald Trump was a disruptor, and Donald Trump is a bad boy. He's a bad boy in the sense that he does awful things to people, and he's a bad boy in the sense that he can play the villain. But Donald Trump was a disruptor. The way he used Twitter in the 2016 campaign, the way his team, the way his supporters used the internet, disrupted traditional political campaigning, and neither the media nor Hillary Clinton knew how to deal with it. Right? Like, that's the simple reality of one of the reasons Donald Trump is president right now. Donald Trump is a disruptor. Joe Biden has shown that he can't even run the live stream, and he has difficulty speaking sometimes. That's why Joe Biden has to be on more and more and more of his live streams, and in some cases, do live streams without Joe Biden. In some cases, many, many live streams without Joe Biden. You know, there was 3 or 4 she did last week for Michigan alone. This man is not ready to run an internet campaign. And you might say, Christo, this is just a blip. Everybody has blips. That's true. I've had live stream issues, but I'm not running for president. I don't have hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to invest in my digital outreach. I don't have those things. I'm some guy. Joe Biden is a wealthy man in a multi-million-dollar mansion with a political establishment behind him, and he can't run a live stream good. This man is setting all of us up to fail and have Donald Trump be the next president. The left, again, I've said this so many times, we do not want to see Donald Trump be president for another 4 years, but we are deeply concerned on everything from Biden's right-wing views to his actions against Tara Reade, to his inability to communicate, to his inability to campaign, that this man is going to lose in November.